The wind screamed across the white land like a living monster. Snow flew in every direction, biting skin, cutting eyes, and making the world blind. The storm was so strong that even machines failed, but a lone human kept walking through the storm. His name was not important here. What mattered was his stubborn heart. Each step was heavy. His boots sank deep into the snow. His body was wrapped in thick survival gear, but even with technology, the cold tried to eat him alive. His breath turned into white smoke that froze instantly in the air. The storm pressed on his chest like an enemy. Any other man would have turned back long ago, but he kept moving. The scanner in his glove blinked weakly, its signal fighting the storm. Strange life signs flashed across the screen. At first, he thought it was an error. Nothing could live here, not in this endless sea of ice. But the signal came again. 2 life forms, very close and very weak. He stopped. His heart beat faster. The snow roared in his ears, but he only thought one thing. Someone is out there, dying. The human hesitated. Every survival rule said the same thing. Save yourself. Do not stop in a storm. Stopping meant death, but he looked at the blinking scanner again. 2 lives, fading fast. He clenched his jaw. He had a choice. Leave them to die or risk his own life to reach them. He chose. He pushed forward, forcing his body against the storm. Snow hit his visor, freezing it, but he wiped it clear. The scanner beeped louder now, guiding him. His gloved hands dug into the snow, pulling away layers of ice. The storm screamed louder, as if warning him to stop. And then, he saw something. A faint glow, blue and soft, under the snow. Not human, not natural. His pulse jumped. He dug faster, his hands burning with cold, until finally a shape appeared. A face, delicate pale blue skin with strange markings across the cheeks, eyes closed, frozen lips. It was an alien, a woman. His breath caught. She looked almost peaceful, as if asleep, but her chest moved only slightly, so weak it was almost invisible. He brushed more snow away and froze in shock. There was another. Right beside her, almost touching, was a second alien. She looked almost the same skin, same glow, but her face carried softer features. Her hand was curled against her sister's arm, as if even in death she refused to let go. 2 sisters, trapped in ice, almost gone. The human's mind screamed at him, "This is impossible. You can't save them. You'll die trying." But another voice inside him whispered, "If you walk away, they die, and you will live with that forever." His hands shook, not from cold, but from the weight of the moment. He pulled out his emergency heat blanket, wrapping it around the first alien, then the second. He activated his portable heater, pressing it close to their bodies. The small flame of warmth fought against the endless cold. The storm howled, snow piled on his back, but he ignored it. His hands pressed against the alien's skin. Ice cracked and melted slowly. Their glow returned, faint but real. Minutes passed like hours. His fingers felt numb, his lungs burned, his body screamed for rest. But finally, a sound, a weak breath. The first alien's chest rose higher, a broken gasp escaping her lips. Her eyelids fluttered open just for a second, showing eyes that glowed like frozen stars. She looked at him. Fear, confusion, then relief. She tried to speak, but her voice was nothing but a whisper. The translator in his suit caught it, breaking it into human words. "You saved us?" Before he could answer, the second sister coughed weakly, pulling herself closer to him. Her fingers touched his arm. Even in her weakness, she held on tight, as if he was the only solid thing in this endless storm. The human looked at both of them, half alive in his arms, and felt the storm rage around him. He knew one thing clearly now. This night, on this frozen alien world, his life was no longer his own. He had chosen to fight for them. He had chosen to save them. But deep inside, he also knew saving them would not be the end. It would only be the beginning. The storm screamed louder, but he didn't hear it anymore. He only heard the faint breaths of the 2 alien sisters he had just pulled back from the edge of death. And somewhere in that frozen silence, destiny had been born. The storm outside did not stop. It screamed, shook the ground, and tried to bury everything under ice. But inside the small hollow he had dug, the human held on to 2 fragile lives. The aliens were still cold, their bodies shivering under the heat blanket. Their blue skin glowed faintly, like dim lanterns fading in the dark. Their breathing was shallow, broken, and painful. He could see their ribs move, slow and weak. He worked fast. His training told him exactly what to do. Warm the body slowly, Give air, keep the heart alive. He pressed a small oxygen mask against the first sister's face. The machine hissed softly. Her chest lifted, then fell. Slowly, her breathing grew stronger. The second sister stirred next. Her eyes trembled beneath her closed lids, then opened suddenly. They were bright, like crystal water shining under a frozen sun. She gasped, then coughed violently, her body shaking. The human steadied her gently. His gloved hand pressed against her back, holding her upright. "Easy," he whispered, though she did not understand his words. Her hand grabbed his arm tightly. For a moment she looked terrified, confused by the sight of him. A strange creature in a thick suit with a covered face, holding strange tools. To her, he was no doubt alien, maybe even a monster. But then her sister stirred too. The first one blinked open her eyes. She looked at him, her lips blue, her voice barely alive, the translator. On his suit cracked the sound into words. "You, human?" The voice was weak but clear. He nodded once. She blinked again. Her eyes moved toward her sister, then back at him. With great effort, she whispered, "Saved us?" He gave no answer. Words felt useless in the middle of the storm. Instead, he kept working, adjusting the heater, tightening the blankets, and checking their vital signs. The sisters exchanged a glance. Even in their weakness, there was something unspoken between them. A bond. They held each other's hands, and then both of them reached for him. Their fingers, thin and cold, pressed against his suit as if to make sure he was real. The human looked at them, their glowing eyes staring into his. In that moment, the storm outside felt far away, but safety was still not here. He knew if they stayed in the open, they would all die. The storm was too strong, the predators too near. He had to find shelter. "Move," he muttered to himself. "Now." With slow care, he lifted the weaker sister into his arms. Her body was light, too light, like hollow bones covered with fragile skin. The other tried to stand, but her legs failed. He supported her with his other arm. Snow crushed down around them. The storm howled, trying to rip them away from him. But he pushed forward, step after step. His boots sank deep, his muscles screamed with pain, but he did not stop. Through the storm, his visor showed a flicker of hope, a cave, a dark shadow in the white wasteland. He stumbled toward it, dragging the sisters with every ounce of strength he had left. At last, they reached the entrance. The cave was narrow but deep enough to block the storm. He laid them gently against the stone wall and started a small fire with his survival kit. The glow spread warmth into the dark. The sisters sat close to each other, wrapped in the blanket, their shivers finally slowing. Firelight touched their faces, showing strange markings on their skin, patterns like frozen rivers, glowing softly. They were beautiful, but also otherworldly. The human sat opposite them, silent, watching. He had seen many things in the galaxy, but nothing like this. The first sister tried to speak again. Her voice cracked, broken, but the translator caught it. "We thought no one would come." The second one whispered, "Storm takes all. No one returns." He said nothing. His silence made them study him more carefully, their eyes glowing like cold stars, filled with something strange, not just gratitude, curiosity, wonder. Finally, the weaker one asked, "Why? Why save us?" The question echoed in the cave. The human stared into the fire. He could not explain in their language, not fully, but after a long pause, he answered in a quiet voice, "Because no one deserves to die alone in the dark." The translator caught the words. The sisters' eyes widened. They looked at each other, then back at him. For a moment, the cave was silent except for the fire. But inside their hearts, something changed. The fear they had felt toward him began to fade. In its place grew respect. And something deeper. The storm still raged outside. The night was far from safe. But in that small cave, 3 souls shared the fragile spark of survival. The human had given them breath. And the sisters, though still weak, now looked at him not only as a rescuer, but as someone far more important, someone who had stepped into death itself and carried them back. And deep inside, though they had just met, they both felt the same strange thought. Their lives were no longer only theirs, they now belonged to him. The cave fire burned low, throwing shadows across the rocky walls. Outside, the storm still screamed, but inside there was a fragile bubble of warmth. The human sat near the flames, his rifle resting against the stone, his helmet set aside. Across from him, the 2 alien sisters leaned against each other, wrapped in the blanket, their glowing eyes never leaving him. Their breaths had steadied. The frost no longer clung to their skin, but their silence was heavy, filled with questions. At last, the older sister spoke. Her voice was still weak, but steadier than before. The translator cracked and hummed, turning her words into simple human speech. "We are called Elira and Celine." The human gave a small nod. Their names carried a soft rhythm, almost like music. He repeated them once, slowly so he would not forget. Elira, Celine. The younger one, Celine, tilted her head with surprise. Hearing her name in his strange human tongue seemed to spark a little light in her eyes. She whispered something in her own language, and the translator struggled before breaking it into words. He speaks like a child, but he tries. Elira gave her sister a faint smile before turning back to the human. "You risked your life for us. Why?" He poked the fire with a metal rod, thinking, "Because I saw 2 lives about to end. I couldn't walk away." The sisters exchanged another look. They were not used to such an answer. In their world, survival often meant leaving the weak behind. Yet here was a stranger, a human, who had chosen the opposite. Celine leaned forward, her voice soft. "No one has ever saved us before. Not like this." The fire popped loudly, as if to mark the weight of her words. After a long pause, Elira began to tell their story. Her voice carried sorrow, and the translator echoed it with a hollow tone. "We came from the northern clans, proud people, strong. But the storm took our ship. The sky itself froze and broke it apart. We fell into the snow, our guards, our family, all lost. We were left to the storm, left to die." Celine's hand tightened on her sister's arm. Her eyes filled with tears that sparkled like frozen crystals. "We waited in the snow. We thought no one would find us. No one would care." He human listened quietly. He had seen many tragedies across the stars, but this one felt close, heavy, as if the storm itself had wanted them erased from existence. He finally said, "But you are alive now, and as long as I breathe, you stay alive." The sisters stared at him, stunned by the certainty in his voice. He spoke as if survival was not a chance, but a promise. For a long while, the cave was silent except for the fire. Then Elira asked, "Where are you from, human?" He looked into the flames. "A world far from here. Blue oceans, green forests, warm skies. Not like this." Celine's eyes widened. "A paradise?" He almost smiled. "It feels that way when I think of it." The sisters leaned closer. They had never heard of such a place. Their world was full of storms, ice, and endless survival. The idea of oceans and warm skies sounded like a dream. But Elira's gaze sharpened. "If you have such a world, why are you here? Why risk yourself on our dead land?" He hesitated. The truth was complicated. He was an explorer, a wanderer, perhaps even a man running from his own ghosts. But he simply answered, "Because sometimes you don't choose the path chooses you." The translator broke the words into alien speech, and the sisters froze, eyes wide. That saying was ancient in their culture. Only their elders spoke of it. To hear it from a human stranger felt like destiny whispering in the cave. Celine placed her hand over his. Her touch was light, trembling, but filled with meaning. "You are not just a rescuer. You are a sign, a gift the storm could not take." Elira did not speak, but her eyes told the same story: gratitude, respect, and something deeper, still hidden beneath the surface. The fire began to fade, and he added more fuel. The warmth spread again, but this time it was not only the fire that kept them alive. It was the bond slowly forming between 3 souls who should never have met. Outside, the storm screamed on, wild and endless. But inside the cave, a new silence grew. Not the silence of death, but a silence of trust, fragile and rare. The human had saved 2 sisters from the edge of nothing. Now, in their eyes, he was no longer just a stranger. He was part of their story, part of their survival, part of their world. And as the night stretched long, none of them spoke the thought that quietly burned in their hearts. This meeting was no accident. It was the beginning of something greater. The fire in the cave burned lower, its orange glow pushing back only a small part of the darkness. The human sat with his rifle across his knees, eyes sharp, ears listening to every sound. The storm outside had not ended. It screamed, howled, and slammed snow against the rocks. But in the spaces between the wind, he heard something else. A sound that did not belong to the storm. A low growl, deep, hungry. He froze. His instincts screamed. He had fought across many worlds, and he knew the sound of predators when he heard it. The sisters felt it too. Celine's glowing eyes widened, and Elira's hand moved to her sister's arm. "What is that?" Elira whispered through the translator. The human did not answer, Instead, he slowly rose, gripping his rifle tighter. He moved toward the mouth of the cave. Snow blew in hard, stinging his face, but his eyes scanned the white night. At first, he saw nothing, just shadows and swirling snow. Then, movement. A dark shape crawled low across the snow, too big to be an animal he knew. Its body was long, almost snake-like, but with legs that dug into the ice. Its eyes glowed faint yellow, cutting through the storm. Then another shape appeared, and another. His breath tightened. There were 3 of them, hunters of the storm. The growls grew louder, mixing with the storm's scream. The sisters pressed closer together, fear shining in their eyes. Celine whispered, "Ice stalkers. They follow heat. They smell fear." The human didn't move. His voice. He was calm, low, steady. "Stay behind me. Do not make a sound." The creatures crept closer, their bodies shifting like shadows in the snow. He waited. Every muscle in his body tensed like a bowstring ready to snap. Then one creature lunged, its jaws wide with rows of sharp teeth. He fired. The blast lit up the night, burning through the storm with a burst of blue light. The shot hit the beast square in the chest, throwing it back into the snow. The sisters gasped, their glowing eyes wide. But the other 2 did not retreat. They hissed, long and angry, and rushed forward. The human fired again, but the storm was wild, his aim shaken by the wind. One shot missed, cutting into the snow. Another grazed a creature's shoulder, but it kept charging. He stepped back into the cave. The beasts slammed against the rocks, their claws scraping stone. Their long bodies writhed, their jaws snapping. The sisters screamed softly, clutching each other, but the human stood firm. The first creature broke through, leaping inside the cave. Its size filled the narrow space, its teeth glinting in the firelight. The human dropped to one knee, aimed, and fired point blank. The blast tore through the monster's skull, dropping it instantly. But the last one was already on him. It crashed forward, slamming him against the wall. His rifle skidded across the stone floor. The beast's hot breath hit his face, its teeth snapping inches away. He fought back with raw strength, shoving his arm against its throat to keep its jaws away. His muscles burned, his lungs screamed for air. The beast roared, pressing harder. "Elira, Celine, move back!" he shouted. The sisters, trembling but desperate, grabbed a burning stick from the fire and struck at the beast. The flames touched its skin, and it howled in pain, giving the human a chance. With one brutal move, he drew his sidearm, pressed it under the beast's jaw, and fired. The shot blasted through its skull. The creature collapsed, shaking the ground as it died. Silence returned. Only the storm. Outside roared on. The human stood there, chest heaving, smoke rising from his weapon. His body was bruised, but alive. He looked down at the dead beasts, then back at the sisters. They were staring at him in shock, their glowing eyes wide, their bodies shaking, not only with fear, but with something else. Awe. Celine dropped the burning stick and whispered, "He fights the storm's hunters, and wins." Elira placed her hand against her heart, her voice low. "No warrior of our clan could do what he just did. He is more." The human said nothing. He only picked up his rifle, checked it, and then returned to the fire. He sat down heavily, the shadows of the beasts lying still in the cave entrance. The sisters did not move for a moment. Then they came closer, slowly, like moths drawn to flame. They sat beside him, their hands brushing against his arm, their eyes locked on his face. In their culture, a warrior who protected the clan was respected, but a warrior who stood alone against death itself. He was something greater. Outside, the storm raged on, but inside the cave, 3 survivors sat together, bound by blood, danger, and the sharp edge of survival. And in that silent bond, the sisters knew one truth. The human was not just a rescuer anymore. He was becoming their protector. The cave smelled of smoke and blood. The fire still burned, its light dancing across the stone walls, but now 3 dead creatures lay just outside the entrance. Their bodies twitched faintly before the cold claimed them. The storm had covered them in a sheet of white snow, as if the world itself wished to bury the evidence of battle. The human sat with his back against the wall, his breath heavy. His arm throbbed where the beast had pinned him. His chest ached from the impact, but he was alive. More importantly, the sisters were alive. Elira and Celine sat close to him, their eyes wide, with silent emotion. They had seen warriors before, they had seen battles before, but never had they seen someone fight like this. One human against the storm's hunters, standing unbroken where others would fall. Celine spoke first, her voice soft but sharp with awe. "You fight like fire in the snow." The translator hummed, turning her words into broken human speech, but the meaning was clear. The human gave no proud smile, no boast. He simply answered, "I fight because I must." Elira leaned forward, her hand brushing against his arm. Her touch was gentle, almost hesitant, as though she feared he might vanish. "And you fought. For us." He looked at them, his eyes steady. "Yes, for you." The fire crackled louder, filling the silence that followed. The sisters exchanged a glance, their bond as strong as breath itself. Then Elira spoke again, her voice carrying a weight he did not yet understand. "In our clan, when someone saves your life, you owe them honor. But when someone saves sisters, they are no longer outsider. They are part of us." The human frowned slightly. "Part of you?" Celine nodded, her glowing eyes fixed on him. "You are tied to us now, by blood, by storm, by survival." The meaning pressed heavy in the cave. He had not only saved them from death, he had stepped into something deeper, something ancient in their culture. The sisters moved closer, sitting on either side of him. They shared the blanket with him now, their cold bodies pressed against his warmth. He felt their strange skin, soft and faintly glowing, against his arm. Their presence was strange, alien, and yet not unwelcome. For the first time since the storm began, the human felt a quiet peace. They sat like that for a while, listening to the fire and the distant howl of the wind. Finally, Celine whispered, her voice trembling with honesty. "We thought we would die in the snow, but you came. You are the reason we still breathe." The human turned his head slightly, studying her face. Her eyes reflected the firelight like shining stars. He did not speak. Words felt small in moments like this. Elira broke the silence, her voice steady and serious. "Human, do you understand what you have done? By saving us, you have claimed more than our lives. You have claimed our bond. Our people believe life debt cannot be broken. It ties us forever." Her words echoed against the stone walls, heavy and unshakable. The human stayed quiet for a long moment. His mind searched for a response, but there was none. He had come to explore, to survive, not to bind himself to alien traditions. Yet here, with two sisters staring at him as if he carried the weight of their entire world, he realized the choice had already been made. He whispered finally, "I didn't save you for a reward. I saved you because it was the right thing." The translator carried the words, and the sisters' faces softened. Elira placed her hand over his, firm, almost ceremonial. Celine followed, her smaller hand pressing on top. "Then it is true," Elira said. "The storm chose you, not us." The firelight flickered, casting long shadows. The human looked at their hands covering his, and for the first time in a long while, he felt something he could not name. A bond, a connection stronger than survival. The storm outside still hunted them. More dangers would come, but in that cold, endless night, three hearts had found warmth in each other. The human leaned back against the wall, exhaustion finally pulling at his body. The sisters stayed beside him, refusing to let go of his hands, as if their lives still depended on his touch. And perhaps, in a way, they did. When the fire dimmed and their eyes finally closed, the cave was filled with a silence unlike any before. Not the silence of fear, not the silence of death, but the silence of trust, fragile, powerful, and unbreakable. The human had come into the storm alone, but he would not walk out of it the same. For in the bond born that night, in the cold of an alien world, destiny had tied him to Elira and Celine forever. The storm began to weaken. After endless hours of roaring winds, the howls grew softer, and the snow outside fell in smaller waves. The human stood at the mouth of the cave, staring out into the pale morning light. The world was white and endless, broken only by the shadows of dead beasts buried in snow. Behind him, Elira and Celine stirred awake. They still clung to the warmth of the fire and the bond they had made in the night. Their glowing eyes followed him as he looked across the frozen horizon. He spoke without turning. "A rescue signal is still active. If the storm has passed, a ship may come soon." The sisters exchanged a glance. Their faces showed something deeper than relief, something closer to fear. Elira rose, her steps slow but steady. "A ship will come. Yes. But for us, that does not end the storm." The human turned, puzzled. "What do you mean?" Celine stood too, her voice soft, hesitant. "In our clan, when one saves two sisters, it is not only rescue, it is fate." The words carried weight heavy enough to fill the cave. The human frowned. "Fate?" Elira stepped closer. Her eyes were serious now, her voice sharp with tradition. "Our law is older than the storm. To save one life is honor. But to save sisters together is more. It means you are chosen, you are bound, you cannot walk away. The human's chest tightened. Bound? How? Celine's cheeks flushed faintly, her glowing skin pulsing like light underwater. She whispered, "Bound as husband." The cave fell silent. Even the fire seemed to dim at her words. The human stared, unable to answer. He had fought, bled, and carried them through the storm, but marriage had never crossed his mind. He wanted to keep them alive, not claim them. He stepped back. "No, that's not why I saved you. I don't want your law. I don't want—" He stopped himself, searching for words. "I only wanted you to live." But Elira shook her head firmly. "Your want does not matter. Our clan will see the bond. They will know. To refuse is to shame us. To shame us is to dishonor our family." Her words hit like stone. The sisters looked at him not with anger but with fear of what would happen if he rejected their law. Celine's voice broke softly. "If you walk away, they will call us cursed. Sisters unworthy to live. We would be cast out." The human felt the weight of their eyes on him, the desperation hidden behind their calm words. He had saved their lives, but if he refused their tradition, he might still destroy them. He ran a hand over his face, the pressure in his chest tightening. He was a soldier, an explorer, a survivor, but marriage? To two alien sisters bound by law? His mind spun with the strangeness of it. And yet, he looked at them. Elira, proud and strong, her gaze burning with determination. Celine, softer, her eyes trembling with both fear and hope. Together they had held his hands through the night, refusing to let go. Together they had trusted him with their lives. Was this really so strange? He thought of his world so far away, green forests, warm oceans. He thought of his long, lonely travels across the stars. How many times had he fought alone, bled alone, survived alone, and now, here in the coldest place he had ever known, two lives clung to him, not because he demanded it, but because they believed it was destiny. He breathed out slowly. "If I agree, it will not be just your law. It must be my choice too." Elira's eyes softened, a rare crack in her warrior pride. "Then choose, human, here, now, before the storm carries us away again." Celine stepped forward, her hand trembling as it reached for his. "Please, don't let us face the clan alone." The human looked at their hands, one strong, one gentle, both reaching for him. His heart pounded. He had to face death without fear, but this choice shook him more than any battle. Finally, he closed his eyes. "I choose to stand with you." The sisters gasped softly, their eyes glowing brighter. Elira's lips curved into a rare smile, proud and relieved. Celine's tears sparkled as she whispered, "Then it is true. The storm brought us not death, but a husband." The human exhaled, the weight of his choice settling heavy in his chest. He had saved them from the storm, but now he had stepped into a different kind of storm, one born not of snow and wind, but of hearts and tradition. Outside in the distance, the faint hum of engines echoed. A rescue ship was coming. Soon the clan would know. Soon the world would see. And the human realized his life would never again be only his own. The hum of engines grew louder across the frozen horizon. The rescue ship broke through the gray clouds, its lights shining across the snow like a new sunrise. The human stood at the cave mouth with Elira and Celine beside him, their hands still gripping his arms, as though they feared he might vanish with the wind. The ship landed with a hiss of steam, pushing snow aside. Its ramp lowered, and figures stepped out, tall, armored warriors of the Sisters clan. Their armor was dark silver, their cloaks heavy with fur. Their glowing eyes scanned the land until they saw Elira and Celine. Gasps of shock and joy filled the air. The warriors rushed forward, falling to their knees before the sisters. "They live! The storm did not take them!" voices cried through the translators. But then, their eyes turned to the human. The sight of an outsider standing between the sisters, his hands still touching theirs, made the warriors pause. Murmurs spread like fire. Elira stepped forward, her chin lifted high. Her voice carried pride and steel. "We were lost to the storm. We were buried in death. But this human tore us from the snow. He fought the storm's hunters. He kept us alive when all hope was gone." Celine added, her voice softer but filled with truth. "Without him, you would be mourning our bodies. Instead, we stand here, alive. Because of him. The warriors' eyes widened, their whispers grew. Some bowed their heads in respect, others frowned in disbelief, but none dared to interrupt. The human stood silent, watching as the sisters revealed their truth. He had no desire for glory, no need for honor. He only wanted them safe. Yet here, in the cold eyes of their clan, he felt the weight of destiny pressing down. Elira's voice grew louder, echoing across the snow. Our law is clear. When one saves two sisters, his life is bound to ours. By blood, by storm, by fate. This human is no longer outsider. He is our chosen. He is our husband. A wave of shock rolled through the warriors. Some gasped, some shouted, but slowly as the storm's winds died around them, silence fell. The clan leader stepped forward, his armor marked with ancient runes, his eyes sharp as ice. He looked at the sisters, then at the human. His voice was deep, carrying the weight of generations. The storm took many lives, yet you bring back two. This law is older than all of us. It cannot be broken. He turned to the human, his expression unreadable. Do you accept the bond? The human felt all eyes upon him. He thought of his own world, so far away, and of the path that had led him here. He thought of Elira's strength, Celine's hope, and the night in the cave when they had held his hands as if their lives depended on it. He nodded once, firm. I accept. A murmur spread through the clan, but this time it was not doubt. It was awe. The leader bowed his head deeply. Then you are no longer stranger. You are kin. The sisters stood tall beside him, their faces glowing with pride. Celine's hand trembled as it found his, but her smile was bright. Elira's gaze burned with strength, her voice steady as she declared, This human belong. Giaz to us, and we belong to him. The clan raised their weapons in salute. The sound echoed like thunder across the frozen land. The storm that had tried to claim the sisters had failed. Instead, it had given birth to a new legend. The rescue ship carried them back to the city of ice, where more whispers spread. Everywhere he walked, the human felt eyes upon him, some full of doubt, others full of wonder. Children pointed at him, calling him the Stormbringer. Elders bowed, muttering ancient blessings. But through it all, Elira and Celine never left his side. They walked with him, proud and unafraid, declaring to all that he was theirs. That night, under the glowing towers of the alien city, the clan held a gathering. Fires burned, drums echoed, voices rose in song. Elira and Celine stood before their people and spoke of the storm, the beasts, the cave, and the human who had stood against death itself. When the human was brought forward, the crowd fell silent. He looked at them all, unsure of what to say. Finally, he spoke in simple words, words the translator carried to every ear. I did not save them for honor. I did not save them for law. I saved them because no one deserves to die alone, and if that binds me to your people, then I accept it. I will stand with Elira. I will stand with Celine. I will stand with you. For a moment, silence held the air. Then the crowd roared with voices, a wave of sound that shook the city itself. They chanted his name, giving it power, giving it life. The human felt their voices in his bones. He had come to this frozen world a stranger. He had expected only danger, maybe death. Instead, he had found two sisters who had given him a place, a bond, and a destiny. As the night burned bright with fire and song, Elira and Celine stood close, their hands entwined with his. They looked at him with eyes full of both love and pride. And in that moment, the human understood. He was no longer just a survivor, no longer just an outsider. He was a legend,